He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, my friends. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Well, I only want to spend a little time on this, but Obama will not be meeting with Putin. Now, I don't care if they meet or not, quite frankly. But I wish somebody would tell me, what is Barack Obama's foreign policy? What is his foreign policy doctrine? I mean, appeasement, obviously, is laced throughout his thinking. But what is the foreign policy doctrine? It's not peace through strength. It's not trust but verify. It's not build up the military. I mean, what the... listen, we have to have a bit of a frank talk about this. This democracy project has been nothing but a complete disaster in the Middle East. Where has it worked? Iraq is now unraveling with enormous control over it by Iran. Libya is a disaster. Always has been and still is. Egypt, which was a fairly solid ally, is, I don't know what it is anymore. Syria, yes, run by a terrorist-supporting nut job. But look what's going on in Syria right now. Al-Qaeda's on the rise. Afghanistan, which could have been won, now it doesn't seem to matter. We're just leaving. And we could go on and on about the Middle East. The democracy project was not Obama's project. It was George W. Bush's project. And as I said at the time, you cannot impose democracy, little d democracy, on top of civilizations that are not civil societies, haven't known it, and are not embracing it. What you do in circumstances like that is you build alliances that are in the best interests of this country and our allies. But the notion that you're going to create some kind of a democratic system, a la a constitutional convention in the United States, is just, it's so childish and unsophisticated and such a radical approach. And yet it was the heart and soul, the core of the Bush foreign policy. Okay, now I know what his foreign policy was. But what is the Obama foreign policy? And not just in the Middle East. We now have a new Cold War. Let's just call it what it is. We now have a new Cold War with Russia. Now, Russia is weakened, thanks to Ronald Reagan. But it's a Cold War. Moreover, Red China is massively building its military, spreading its influence, threatening India, threatening Japan, two of our allies, even threatening Vietnam, which has asked us for help, and threatening the Philippines. Taking islands, occupying areas that don't belong to it, making threats, explicit and implicit. And what are we doing about it? Nothing. What are we going to do if Red China invades Taiwan? What would this president do? I dare say nothing. We are now on the road to having under 300 ships in our Navy. When Ronald Reagan was president, at the height of his buildup of the military, we had 600 ships. The United States Army, its numbers will be at the lowest point by this president, when he's done, since pre-World War II. What is our foreign policy? And does Barack Obama so detest the nation in which he is president, the nation in which he is commander-in-chief, that as president and commander-in-chief, he has as his mission the dismantling of our superpower status? What is his policy? And Mr. Call Screener, let us leave a few lines open to find out. Because I have no idea other than what I just stated. And if there are liberals out there who would like to tell me, we'd be more than happy to hear from you, as long as you can speak in complete and coherent sentences without reaching a high octave. And so Obama says, no, I'm not going to meet with Putin, because Putin has no respect for him and could give a damn. See, Obama is constantly negotiating with himself and unilaterally putting things on the table. Cutting our nuclear arsenal, cutting back the missile defense systems that we were giving some of these nations, small nations, allies of ours, real democracies with a little d, that are in the neighborhood of Russia. So Putin already knows. He doesn't care what Obama thinks. Whatever you want to say about Snowden, for 1 year he's free and safe in Russia. So, and doesn't this say more about Obama than even what I've just said? In other words, Obama, it seems to me, can only rule when he has complete control. Like when he had the Democrats, 60 of them in the Senate, and a large majority of Democrats in the House for 2 years. Then he was comfortable. Then he could rule. And as soon as he lost his supermajority in the 2010 election, he was lamenting how America's not like China. You know, autocratic, one-party rule. Things are easier to get done that way. Seems to me Obama has a psychological and personality disorder. That's right, I said it. He can't get along with people. He can't negotiate with people. Good, bad, and indifferent. And so, our Cold War is back. Yes, it's a Cold War. And so, nothing can get done with the Republicans in the House. And this is the way it is with Obama. So I wanted to mention this, and anybody has a thought on exactly what our foreign policy is, please don't repeat what I say. I know it's appeasement. I know the guy is trying to take us down as a superpower. That's part of his fundamental transformation. I know he has nothing but contempt for our history and heritage and seeks to change our society and redesign it into some kind of a centralized utopia. Which, of course, is nothing more than a complete nightmare. I know all these things. But what is the foreign policy? What's the doctrine? He wakes up in the morning with a foreign policy doctrine. What is it? What's the Obama doctrine? I'm curious to see what you think. And when we return, did you know when Medicare was first passed, its implementation in 1966 was an utter disaster? All these Republicans, all these Wall Street Journal editorial writers, all these commentators on cable saying, Obamacare will implode of its own weight. It's already a disaster right out of the chute. Well, Medicare was exactly the same thing. And they're telling us, don't fight. Don't fight. I'll explain when I return.
Mark Levin.
I love that song. I don't what who Gym Class Heroes. It's the band, of course. Mr. Producer whispered that in my ear. It's not bad. Yes. Anyway, I want to hold off on this Obamacare issue a little bit. I miscalculated. I think this debacle that is the Obama foreign policy, which is really jello. It's really disastrous mush. Probably requires a little more discussion among us. Because this jerk may get us into another war. And I don't mean a war somewhere far away. I mean right here. And no, I don't mean by necessarily a nation state. But just look how things are lining up. His refusal to secure the border. His attack on interior enforcement when it comes to immigration. The hollowing out of the United States military. Signaling the world that he is a weak leader. Spending a fortune, our money, what we earned, to collect data on us. Talk about priorities, misapplied priorities. Now, I want to leave a line or two open there, Mr. Call Screener, for any liberal who has the guts to call this program, because most of them don't, to tell us what is Obama's foreign policy. And see if you can do it without mentioning George Bush's name. See if that's possible. I suspect it's not. But give it a shot. Just a positive, affirmative, statement in support of your hero, and just tell us what his policy is. Jeff, San Antonio, Texas, Sirius Satellite, go.
Mark, it's so great to talk to you again. Hey, I'm getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan.
Oh, it's my man, Jeff. You be careful out there, man.
All right.
No, not all right. Now, listen to me. You're going to Afghanistan. You be careful out there, because right now, Afghanistan, we're not there to win. Apparently, we're there to retreat, so you be careful.
Yes, sir. I'll take it to heart, training hard, training my folks hard. But I call it the Dunning-Kruger foreign policy, where you have incompetent people trying to work in the area of where it takes competent leadership.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, but what is this foreign policy? Can you define it?
Well, a good old Army acronym called FUBAR comes to mind, but that's you have a family program, and I have young girls myself.
Well, listen, so when do you come back? Can I ask you that? Are you allowed to tell me that?
I really don't want to really talk about that.
All right, I don't want to get you in trouble.
But it is, we're training up.
Well, let me just tell you this. I have a great affection for you, Jeff. You've called here a few times. You're a great patriot. You're a man's man, and you're going back on the field of combat. And I just want to tell you, please be safe. And as soon as you get back, will you give me a call?
I will, and don't be surprised if I can call it through. I'd call you from in theater. They do have good phone lines with the USO. We can dial 800 numbers out, and if I can get a chance and coordinate the times right, I'll call you and give you a bird's eye view, if you will. And I'm in the medical profession, so we take care of America's sons and daughters so they can go out and defend the republic. And it's a high calling, and I appreciate patriots like you. And I read your excerpts of your book, and it's just fabulous, Mark, that you keep fighting the fight for us that can't really, publicly say things because we wear a uniform.
Well, Jeff, God bless you, man. And you'll be at the front of the line. Just be careful. That NSA is keeping track of all the numbers and all the patterns. I don't want you to get in trouble for calling me.
All right, I understand. But like I said, your work is fabulous. I've learned so much. You are the Socrates
of my goodness.
Talk radio.
Oh, well, you're a great guy, Jeff. God bless you. And you take care of yourself, man.
Okay, Mark, you be good and keep doing it. And again, I appreciate and dig what you do, man. You're a great American, and we need more. And I appreciate you ferreting out the feckless quislings of the left.
All right, brother. You take care. I'm going to miss Jeff till he comes back. He's coming back. All right, I just lost the call screen. Did you guys lose it too? I'm dialing in again. Everybody, let's sing show tunes. Starting with you, Mr. Call Screener, go. No, that... Who am I talking to? Steve, Connecticut, a Democrat. Surprise, go.
Hey, yeah, I'm a liberal, Mark. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you, sir?
Your ranting is fun to listen to, but...
Calling from the Nutmeg State.
Yeah, that's right. The capital is Hartford, if you don't know it. Listen,
we know it. That's quite irrelevant, but go right ahead.
During the Nixon, or I guess Reagan era, the mantra...
Well, at least you didn't bring up Bush, but go ahead.
No, but the mantra was, my country, love it or leave it.
Whoa. Let me tell you something.
What?
I served in the Reagan administration. The mantra was not, my country, love it or leave it, or you would have left.
What are you going to do? We can't go back and live the Reagan years again.
I ask you, what is the Obama foreign policy? Can you please put together a coherent sentence? Go ahead. Matter of fact, Mr. Producer, dust off that 20-second liberal clock. Is it there? Go.
Me for a second. What happens to the love it or leave it? I don't think that's his policy, Mr. Levin. Mr. Obama, his policy is, it's our country. Let's get behind it. He's our president. What are you going to do? You're going to just argue?
Stop the clock. Once again, what is our foreign policy, Steve? Go.
Policy, Mr. Levin, it is a policy that wants the United States of America to be united and show the rest of the world that we can get along with the rest of the world instead of just being a country.
Third try, Mr. Steve, or whatever, Democrat, Connecticut. What is our, notice the word, the emphasis, foreign policy? 20-second liberal clock. Go.
Nixon said, love it or leave it. What do you want to do? My country, right or wrong, which is an immoral statement, isn't it? I lived through Vietnam. I went to Vietnam. So, what do you... I don't think our president wants that kind of a foreign policy.
All right, that's enough of that. Steve, may I ask you a question? It's a personal question. Do you suffer from long-time use of something, like marijuana or something?
Well, over in Nam, everybody did, so...
not over in Nam. I mean here in the great state of Connecticut, the Nutmeg State.
Wasted road.
All right. Thanks for your call, Not. I'll be right back.
This is the Mark Levin Show, where American patriots meet every day. The Mark Levin Show is on at 877-381-3811.
Well, I was going to move on, but apparently I've asked an incredibly complex question. What is the Barack Obama foreign policy doctrine? And I've invited, graciously I might add, liberals to call and defend their conquering hero. And so few have. I've got more. They're here. But Steve in Connecticut was, and I say this with the utmost respect, a rambling buffoon. Didn't you think, Mr. Producer? Fascinating caller. Not really. Let's try Abel, Cleveland, Ohio, Sirius Satellite, a Democrat. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I love your show, actually. I've read Maritopia, and I'm, like I said, I'm a liberal, but I don't know why these people get off calling themselves liberals nowadays, because I share almost nothing with them. It's,
How do you mean?
Well, it's shameful to see what they've done to the Democratic Party. I grew up under Bush. I was in the military. I came out of the military a little peacenik, if you will, and I've grown up to see the world how it actually is. And I still consider myself a liberal at times. But what I've seen is Obama's foreign policy, by and large, is, he demagogues our allies and appeases our enemies.
What do you say to people? There's a lot of people, Abel, and I don't agree with them, who say Obama's foreign policy really is a page out of Bush's foreign policy. Now, we can talk about Bush's foreign policy, but I just don't see that it's a page out of Bush's foreign policy at all. I can't define Obama's foreign policy. Perhaps it's neglect. Perhaps it's passivity. Perhaps it is utter confusion and confoundment. I mean, I know the premise. The premise is America is an unjust superpower, and he alone will hollow out our military and so forth and so on, and he's doing it. But my point is, what is it that he's trying to project overseas? Because I think the only thing he's projecting is weakness.
Oh, absolutely. He's only projecting weakness. He's a coward. But the whole premise that he thinks that this country is an unjust superpower, I would ask him, well, if this country is an unjust superpower, what country is a just superpower? And I guarantee you he could not give you an example of a just superpower in his opinion. If he's power hungry and he's destroying the fabric of our country.
And you say this as a liberal?
As a liberal, yes.
Let me ask you this. If he says, or he believes, or his supporters do, that America is an unjust superpower, what kind of contempt must one have, a president, let alone anyone else, for the American people? I mean, you have to have complete contempt for the American people to be thinking that way, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I don't.
You don't sound like a liberal.
Oh, I'm a liberal in the fact that, you know, if it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg, you do whatever the heck you want to do.
Well, that's not really liberal. That's more libertarian.
Well, yeah, I guess.
If you were a liberal, you would say, no, if you don't pick your pocket or do that, we can control what you eat, what you wear, where you live, what you drive, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to be left alone on my own little land. That's it. I just want to be left alone.
All right, my friend. Thank you for your call. I believe we have a real Democrat here, Brian Fort Worth, the great WBAP. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I would describe this foreign policy as strength through selective use of force.
Very interesting. And how so?
I remember there back at the beginning of the Iraq War, I think part of the problem was we were overstretched in our military, and I think our enemies knew it. And I think now we still have a strong military, but at the same time, we do have to make our priorities. I still am worried about North Korea, still worried about Iran, and I think that us going and fighting all over the place isn't going to help. I think.
Okay, but the choice isn't going around fighting all over the place, quote unquote, is it? The choice is having a very strong military, second to none, remaining the if not the sole, the most powerful superpower of them all. And you say worried about North Korea and in Iran. I don't see us doing anything whatsoever to contain them. Do you?
I do. I think that, one, we're waiting for us to get better support from
I see. So
allies.
The way forward is to wait for our allies. Now, you really think that's a policy?
I think that we have to have full home support when we go in. But
we're not going in. You don't have to go in. I don't believe we're going to fight North Korea again. Why don't we arm up the Japanese and the South Koreans? Is that provocative, you think?
What did you say? I'm sorry?
Why don't we arm up the Japanese and the South Koreans so they can fight for themselves and have a nuclear deterrent of their own? What's wrong with that?
I think adding nukes isn't the help. We end up having...
So far, you haven't told us anything. All you said is strength through selectiveness, and I'm trying to find out where your selectiveness is. And so far, I can find it in a fortune cookie at my favorite Chinese restaurant, which is... basically, look, we got to get our allies. We got to wait for them, and that's just great. But that's not leadership. That's not a foreign policy. Yes or no?
I think it's definitely a foreign policy.
No, it's not. It's a non-policy.
It is recklessness, and I think that's what we've had.
Forget about recklessness. Forget about Bush. Forget about all that stuff. I'm asking you, what is your great hero's foreign policy?
I told you. I think we apply pressure where.
No, you haven't told me.
Right
You've given me one sentence: strength through selectiveness. Okay, where have we shown strength through selectiveness? And your example is we haven't acted because we can't get our allies to support us against North Korea. Well, that's irrational.
North Korea stood down.
It's what?
North Korea stood down recently.
North Korea has stood down? Why? Because they weren't provocative last month? But the month before they were?
Right.
You're the one who brought up North Korea. I don't know. I mean, hold on now. We got all kinds of issues going on here, don't we? You're the one who brought up North Korea. All right, what is the Obama foreign policy in Syria?
Syria's a tough situation because neither.
They're all tough. What's the Obama foreign policy in Egypt?
I think it's to let democracy work.
To let democracy work.
For them to go ahead and do elections and hurry up and get on with the democratic process, yes.
Is it to endorse the Muslim Brotherhood, which he seems to do passively, if not directly?
I don't think so. I think if he was doing that, then he would have called for Morsi to be back in power.
He would have done what? No, you don't have to call for Morsi back in power in order to show sympathy for the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you know why Obama is hated by the people of Egypt? When they were marching in the streets, they hated Morsi, they hated our ambassador, and they hated Obama. Do you know why? Because he stood with the Muslim Brotherhood. He helped arm the Muslim Brotherhood. That's why. You know, strength through selectiveness. Maybe he's selecting the wrong people to be supporting. All right, thank me for your call. There we go. There we go. Anybody know what the Obama foreign policy is? That wasn't it, that's for sure. No, most people don't know. Even his supporters don't know what the Obama foreign policy is. And if I could get John D. Student Kerry on the program, don't worry, we're not even going to try. Not because I wouldn't take him, but because, you know, he'd rather talk to mass murder, genocidal nutjobs than come on this program. Have you noticed that, Mr. Producer? We're going to engage, we're going to engage all over the world. Yes, we are. We're going to talk to the Mugabes and to the this ones and the that ones and the Palestinians, and we'll talk to the Iranians if they'll talk to us, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Mark Levin Show. Can't go on there. No time for that one. Let's see. The Obama foreign policy. What is the Obama foreign policy? The liberals are having enormous difficulty coming up with coherent positions. And the reason is, well, no, I'll save that for the end. Let us try Nathan, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
All right, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'll tell you what, you can call me Nate.
All right, Nate. Nate Hale, Nathan Hale, is that your name?
No, but I do like Nathan Hale a great deal.
All right, my friend. All right, Nate, how are you?
I'm doing great. I was actually calling up because I was a little bit frustrated with some of these libs unable to speak their mind. It's quite interesting how none of them seem to have the ability of telling us what Obama's foreign policy is, especially that genius, I believe his name was Steve from Connecticut, saying how we need to have everybody, I believe he said that Obama's foreign policy was that everybody would love America and we'd all get along. And it's very interesting considering that since Obama has taken office, it seems like more leaders disrespect him. They can't stand him. He's upsetting all of our allies and all of our former enemies who he's trying to pretty much lick their boots. They're just turning their backs on him because they completely disrespect him.
They see him as pusillanimous, to be honest with you. They see him as weak. They see him as a pushover. They see him on his own doing to our country what they could not do themselves if they attacked us. Hollowing out our military, refusing to secure the border, weakening our economy, deindustrializing our heartland. They're sitting back and saying, we don't have to do anything. Obama's doing it for us.
That's exactly. I was having a discussion with one of the libs at my office, and he was talking about the terrorists and how Obama's been doing such a good job because they're not attacking us. Like, why would a terrorist have to attack right now when Obama's doing the job for them? I mean, why would they strike at us when all they have to do is sit back and watch him completely destroy the country from within?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Mark. I also loved what the last liberal had to say about how our foreign policy internationally for each individual place, for instance, Egypt and things like that, where he said that Obama did not call for Morsi to come back into power. Well, Obama sure did call for the leader before him to step down, and then when the people tried to revolt and stand up against Morsi, I believe it was the Obama administration that was telling everybody, the military, to stand down and to let Morsi lead.
You're quite right.
But that's what I was reading in the news.
See, people listening out there, you hear Nathan here, or may I say Nate?
Oh, call me Nate, please, sir.
And then you hear these liberals, and you can see the difference between a conservative and a liberal, right here. It really, I mean, the IQ level, the ability to reason, the logic of a conservative like Nate, and then the rest of them. It's almost like they have Tourette's. They don't, they just keep spitting out the same phrases, or they're marching in circles backwards. They just don't know how to get it done. All right, Nate, thank you for your call, my friend. And the reason is their ideology is almost a religious ideology to them. I'm not talking about a faith in terms of a real faith. They're true believers. It doesn't really matter exactly what they believe in, but they're true believers. They're true believers in their party. They're true believers in the centralization of government, redesigning society, that the world begins today. We can't learn anything from yesterday or the day before that it's a new day. They believe in modernity, they believe, but really their modernity is a regressive ideology, really a throwback ideology, where the individual is not respected. That's what's going on. Hillsdale College, the most alarming danger to your freedom is the inability to defend how important your freedom is. Freedom is under attack every day in the war of ideas, so how can you best defend your liberty? By using your voice to convince others about what's right. Learn to speak up. Become an advocate for the principles of liberty that made America the greatest nation on earth. That's right, I said it, the greatest nation on earth. Senator Ted Cruz eloquently defended our freedom in a wonderfully inspiring speech delivered at Hillsdale College's commencement. You should read it and analyze it and study it. Get access to the speech today for free by subscribing to Imprimis, Hillsdale's speech digest dedicated to promoting civil and religious liberty. And you, my beloved audience, can read his speech right now by signing up at levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. And the president of Hillsdale is my great buddy, brilliant man, Larry Arnn. Learn from this powerful speech, and by signing up, you'll receive many more great issues in the future, all for free. And I love reading Imprimis every month, and you will too. Sign up today at levinforhillsdale.com. Reading the words of gifted orators will help you better defend your freedom, and your voice can help save this nation. So right now, please go to levinforhillsdale.com.
Mark Levin.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as is really usual, I'm afraid, the liberals are befuddled. They don't know how to defend their hero, their commander, their mentor, the imperial president, Barack Hussein Milhouse Obama, because his foreign policy is laced with appeasement and passivity and America-hating language and all the rest of it. But there's no projection of a position, of a doctrine. And the world sees it, and the world sees he's weak. Now, I am surprised that some of you liberals didn't call and tell me about the drone attacks, as if that's a substitute for foreign policy. But the world is a disaster, what's going on in the world from the U.S. perspective. Our allies are sitting on pins and needles. They're thinking, oh, good Lord, what a knucklehead we have here. I'm not sure, Mr. Call Screener. What? Okay. I was just getting a little confused. I wanted to make sure you weren't drinking and call screening. All right, just inside, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, the Obama foreign policy is the same as his domestic policy. Hate America first. And don't work with anybody. Obama can't work within his own party. He can't work with Republicans. He can't work with Putin. He can't work with anybody. See ya. Houston, Texas. XM Satellite. Go.
What's going on, Mark?
Hey, brother.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, man. I'm actually a Reagan Republican, and I talked to your producer. I got the answer, and the answer really is he doesn't have a policy. The guy has no earthly idea what's going on in the world. And case in point, I'm going to take you back a few years back, his first year in the White House. You know, that little thing called the presidential thing that Iran had, the green thing?
Oh, green revolution.
Right. The infrastructure was absolutely weak, and he could have undone what a certain Democratic president did in 79, which is completely ruin Iran. He could have gone in there. He could have wiped all these guys out. You didn't have to worry about Syria, because the key is Iran. My father's always said that. We're from there. If you have Iran, most of these other little places you wouldn't have to worry about. And I think he's making the same mistake with Egypt. I'm going to keep it short to the point. I love you, man. I just don't think the guy has an earthly idea what foreign policy is, or he would have done something about it.
Well, he at least knows one thing. America's too strong, America's too wealthy, America's too secure, and he's working like hell to undo all those things. Thank you for your call, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, to quote General MacArthur, I shall return.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. It is. Yes, it is. It's hour 2. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. As I was sitting here during the break. You know, if Ronald Reagan had done what Obama did today and said he wouldn't sit down with Putin, whatever, the libs would be going nuts. They would be talking about how his foreign policy is a failure. They'd be going on and on about how he's made the world so much more dangerous. Are you hearing that from the libs today? No. They called the program at my request, and what are you hearing? Well, you're hearing, all kinds of maladies, I may say, Tourette's, stuttering, incoherence, but when we cut through all the usual, what are we hearing? Idiocy. Idiocy. All right, I only have 3 hours, so I got to move along here. You're hearing on and on and on how Obamacare is imploding. Just step back, let it implode. Republicans, don't fight it, just let it go. It's going to die of its own weight. Have you heard these platitudes? Yes, I hear it from the likes of Wall Street Journal editorial writers on my dear friend Neil Cavuto's show. I hear it everywhere because this is the talking point that Svengali with the 7% victory record Karl Rove has put out to all the Republics and the other French Republicans, and they repeat it. Hey, you know what? What? It's imploding. It's of its own weight. It's a disaster. It's going to crumble. Folks, a law doesn't implode of its own weight. You either repeal it or you don't. You either repeal spending or you don't. You either obstruct something or sabotage it or you don't. The law doesn't have a deadline in which it implodes. The entire discussion is inane. But then again, what do you expect from the repubes? And it's not unlike a discussion that was occurring when Medicare was first instituted, because I went back and I started doing research, which is my want, and I went back and I said, I'm sure when they were instituting Medicare and the rest of these programs, it wasn't a smooth ride at first. And I'm not saying that to justify what's going on. I'm saying that to tell you that this Republican argument that is everywhere, that the thing's such a disaster and everybody's going to rise up against it and it's going to implode on its own, is malarkey. Now, when I'm by myself, I don't use the word malarkey, Mr. Producer. I don't even know what the hell malarkey is. But you get my drift. So I dug a little bit, didn't have to dig hard, and I looked at the Washington Compost and an article written by Sarah Cliff, with a K, of course, not to be confused with Sarah Cliff with a C, going all the way back to May 17th of this year. Quote, Medicare workers in Washington are learning that door-to-door selling is a rugged job, a writer in the Washington Compost declared 47 years ago, because Medicare came into being in 1966. It was March 3, 1966, after a Washington Compost reporter had spent the day trailing Medicare workers who tried to sign seniors up for the new program. Some didn't answer the door. Others slammed the doors in their faces. One man reportedly stuck his nose out the door to say, I'm not 65, I'm 57. Sometimes they peek through the windows when they see me coming and they won't answer the door, Medicaid worker Jim Anderson told the Compost. They must think I'm selling books or something. Well, Medicare today is a very popular program, despite the fact it's ultimately unsustainable and it will sink financially. But it can't be undone legally unless it's undone legally. But that's not my point. As Sarah Cliff with a K, not with a C, reports in the Washington Compost on May 17th of this year, the Medicare being popular, it wasn't always true. Back in 1966, as Medicare was just about to launch, nobody knew whether the new program would provide benefits to millions or fail completely. Sound familiar? What will happen then on the summer day when the federally insured system of paying hospital bills becomes reality? Nona Brown, a New York Slimes reporter, wondered in a story published April 23, 1966. Will there be lines of old folks in hospital doors with no rooms to put them in, too few doctors and nurses and technicians to care for them? You see, all the predictions of how the Medicare program would implode, the people would rise up, that it was an absolute, utter disaster. Now, it may be all those things. But the idea that that is going to end a program is absurd. Is absolutely absurd. This is important. Because it is alluring to hear Republicans say, do nothing and the program will die on its own. Do nothing and the program will be here forever. Why would you risk it? Like the Affordable Care Act, the fight over Medicare was contentious. President John F. Kennedy had tried to extend health benefits to the elderly and failed. Lyndon Johnson signed Medicare into law July 30, 1965. Benefits would become available July 1st, 1966. That gave the Johnson administration less than a year to reach 19 million seniors. Medicare was, as the New York Slimes put it in April 1966, bracing for M-Day. M-Day. Medicare Day, like D-Day. So the federal government launched Project Medicare Alert, a program that hired 5,000 workers to enroll seniors in Medicare. The $2 million crash effort, as described by the Compost, was meant to inform isolated elderly Americans of the availability of Medicare benefits. Does this sound familiar to you folks? 47 years later. Workers hired for a 20-week stint were paid $1.25 an hour. Good money back then. There were still concerns about whether the enrollment efforts would actually work. The seniors who needed the program the most, Washington Compost columnist William Raspberry wrote, tended to be the hardest to reach. The program came with a $3 monthly premium, and Raspberry worried those who will have trouble coming up with the $3 a month are precisely those who can least afford not to enroll. On the whole, however, the enrollment effort worked. Of the 19 million seniors eligible for Medicare, 93% enrolled by the summer of 1966. Social Security Administration Commissioner Robert Ball enlisted the U.S. Forest Service to send forest rangers out into the woods in search of elderly hermits, I'm quoting, whom he might be able to enroll. And much to the wonk block's liking, he held news conferences with charts that showed Medicare's enrollment levels. M-Day arrived, and it was a bit of a dud. At 12:01 a.m. yesterday, Dan Morgan and Martin Well wrote on July 2, 1966, Uncle Sam began paying the hospital bills of close to 1,000 patients over 65 in area hospitals. Medicare had thus begun. Medicare's very first patient, incidentally, was Mary Augustus, 68, of Hartford, Connecticut. Steve from Connecticut calls us in the first hour and remind us what important city Hartford is. Her hospital received a check for $331.71 for a surgery performed on July 1. Those long lines that some had worried about, they never materialized. At the end of its third week, the New York Slimes reported on July 25, 1966, the Medicare program was reportedly going smoothly, with difficulties in some areas of the South still the only major problem. Meanwhile, congressmen quickly began looking for ways to expand the Medicare program and make it even larger. And in January 1966, a young congressman from Michigan proposed a bill that would extend Medicare to cover drugs. Such a program was proposed by John Dingell, or as we have affectionately called him here, John Dingleberry. John Dingleberry, now the longest-serving member of the House of Representatives. It wouldn't become law until nearly 4 decades later when Congress created the Medicare Part D program. Do you know, Mr. Producer, under what president the prescription drug program was added to Medicare, a long-held left-wing desire? George W. Bush. George W. Bush. And all those conservatives who surrounded him, who are now on TV and writing blogs, telling us how crazy these Republicans are, a handful of them, for fighting Obamacare. They were involved in expanding Medicare. So what's the point, Mark? What's the moral of the story? I think it's quite clear. Obamacare is not going to die of its own weight. Obamacare is not going to implode. That's not what happens with entitlements like this. Oh, and please don't give me the occasion of long-term care that was added to Medicare when the seniors rose up and it was removed. Several things happened then. First of all, that wasn't the entire Medicare program. It was an add-on. Secondly, we had a president called Ronald Reagan who at the time listened and responded. Today we have really a bunch of timid cowards who will not fight. But please, please, take one thing away from this discussion. Obamacare will not fall of its own weight, a phrase being touted all over TV by Republicans and French Republicans. Mark, what's the difference? Neither. I just like saying both. When Rove says it, when Krauthammer says it, when who else says it? When others say it, they're dead wrong because they don't know history. And now you do. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, folks, this Obamacare, for the statist, this is the ultimate authority over the individual he has long craved. Once the individual is entrapped, the statist controls his fate. The individual will be seduced by the notion that he's receiving a benefit from the state when in reality the government is merely rationing benefits. The individual's tethered to the state, literally and utterly reliant on it for his health and survival. Not only does the government have an ownership interest in private property, but it also has one in the physical individual. And rather than the individual making cost-benefit and cost-quality decisions about his own condition, the statist will do it for him. And the statist will do it very poorly, as he does most other things. This is Liberty and Tyranny a year before Obamacare was passed. Now, I'm going to address something. It's a little difficult for me, but I'm going to address it anyway. Because when I speak to you, I speak, what I know to be true. And I don't candy coat it. Marco Rubio was on this program a few days ago, and he took a very firm stance in favor of fighting to defund Obamacare. I began to read some website posts, including by my friend Pete Wehner, who was a deputy to Karl Rove and worked in the Bush administration, attacking Rubio. First saying that he's a great guy, supports him on the immigration issue, but then attacking Rubio for his stance on defunding Obamacare. I'm just noticing a chorus of people who worked in the Bush administration and who blew up the size of government enormously and the debt. Just collectively, Gerson's another one, I could name others, who just sort of gang up on these conservatives when they're trying to fight not just the good fight, but they're fighting the smart fight on these issues. And I'm pointing out Rubio in this case because I've also been, what are you having him on with the amnesty stuff? I didn't have him on the amnesty stuff. We need votes to defund Obamacare. And what is bothering me is I have never seen staffers for a prior administration, a prior Republican administration, taking such an aggressive position in politics, future politics, as this crowd does, whereas Rove essentially is a junior partner at the RNC and these other Republican institutions, buying lists, buying into lists, raising money with millionaires and billionaires. In other words, they didn't come and go with an administration, but they are still actively trying to control outcomes. It's almost as if they're trying to project what that administration did onto Republicans far into the future. And it's a particularly nasty type of attack that I'm reading. You look at Ted Cruz, one of the smartest individuals you'll ever meet, let alone in Congress. You look at Rand Paul, a doctor, an accomplished man, incredibly intelligent. You look at Mike Lee, again, one of the smartest people you'll ever meet, was a clerk to Sam Alito on the Supreme Court. And you look at some of the conservatives, they're not shooting from the hip. They're not yahoos. They're not kooks. They're not knuckleheads. They're far smarter and far more accomplished than the people who sit behind their keyboards trashing them, trying to preserve the legacy of their former boss and bosses while trying to tear down conservatives. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a fellow who works at the Hoover Institute. I can't remember his full name. His name is Berkowitz. Now, he trashed my book, Liberty and Tyranny, but he seems to think the world began with the New Deal. And really, the effort to reestablish even some semblance of constitutionalism is radical. It's anti-Edmund Burke. It's anti-conservative. So perverse have the moderate Republicans become that they twist philosophy, they twist history, They embrace progressivism while claiming to do none of it, and while trashing conservatives who are trying to stand up to it. Imagine how ferocious they're going to be when my book comes out, and how they're going to try and settle scores. Well, I'm in the fight, and I'm all ready. Here we go.
If you're trying to reach Mark on the air, call him at 877-381-3811. The Mark Levin Radio Show continues.
All right, the first hour I asked, what is Barack Obama's foreign policy doctrine? And liberals could not come up with a coherent, complete sentence. It's understandable. I think I'm going to ask now, based on our discussion of Obamacare and these other issues. You see where they're pushing amnesty and so forth, the Republicans. What is the Republican agenda in Congress? Let me repeat it. What is the Republican agenda in Congress? Because to me it doesn't look a hell of a lot different than Obama's agenda. How much you want to bet they're going to increase the debt ceiling? How much you want to bet they're going to increase taxes and then in the name of receiving some crumbs in which they'll call them cuts, significant cuts, which won't be? How much you want to bet they're going to help promote amnesty and the pathway to citizenship? So I guess what I'm asking is, what do the Republicans stand for? Let me put it that way. What do the Republicans in Congress stand for? And if they stand for something, when will they stand up for it? Rick, Fresno, California, the great KMJ country. Go.
Mark, I just want to say I appreciate all that you're doing. And
Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to your book coming out next Tuesday.
Well, I appreciate it. The Liberty Amendments, you're not going to want to miss it, and I'm sure I'm going to take a lot of incoming fire. And let me tell you something, my friend. I'm ready. I give as good as I get. Go right ahead.
What I think is the Republican strategy.
No. What do the Republicans stand for?
I don't believe they stand for anything that we want. They don't stand for us. I'll give you an example. As far as this Obamacare, if you use their own argument that it's going to implode, it already is imploding. The unions don't want it. The IRS union doesn't want it. The Teamsters don't want it. Congress itself got an exemption, and yet they don't care about us. My premiums have doubled since Obamacare passed.
It's stunning, isn't it? I've talked about what's going on in our little foundation. They've gone up 80%.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. Your point is it's already imploding, and what the hell? It's not going away.
Yeah, so why don't they stand up for us and say, hey, this thing is imploding, the American people don't want it?
Because they say this is a fraud. You can't use the continuing revolution. I wish the continuing resolution to defund Obamacare. They're very disingenuous about this. I mean, you can defund the implementation expenses and a number of discretionary expenses related to it, and you can also come back and promote the legislation. Well, Obama's there. We're not going to win. Make the case to the American people. Explain it to the American people once and for all. What the hell do you stand for? Am I right, Rick?
Exactly. What do they stand for? My own congressman hasn't said a word. He's supposedly a conservative, but he won't sign up on the House side for the
which one is it?
Funding. Devin Nunes.
Oh, Nunes. Yes. Very popular on one particular talk show. Yes. All right, Rick, thank you for your call, my friend. But don't worry, Boehner went golfing with our friend Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has announced that Boehner's a good guy. Okay, great. He's a good guy. He's a good golfer. He likes to smoke, likes to drink. So what? I don't care if he's a good guy. The hell's he doing? I know it's a tough job, and he apparently doesn't do it very well. What do the Republicans in this Congress stand for? Because if they stand for something, I'm not seeing them actually standing up. I'm not talking about speeches on the floor of the House or the Senate. I'm not talking about appearances on TV. What the hell do they stand for, ladies and gentlemen? James, Detroit, Michigan, on the Mark Levin app. How are you, sir?
Mark, thank you very much for having me on your show. I love you, man. You are doing what I've been telling people for years. The Congress, the government is sold out. There's only one last bastion of people that can help, and it's the people themselves. Supreme Court, no one's there for us but the people. And we have to do what you're doing, wake people up to what's going on. They don't stand for anything. They stand for the same agenda that's going on, status quo.
They're status quo. This is what I say over and over again. The Republicans are perfectly fine with the government as is. And as a matter of fact, like I said, when Bush was president and they had both houses of Congress, they weren't even satisfied with the status quo. They grew the government even more.
No, and growing, I mean, they're printing money like crazy. Here, last night, Greta Van Susteren on Fox has got civilians.
Well, I don't watch that show, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, I did last night, and this was something that was extremely surprising, and I guess I'm wondering what your take on this is. They're spending, she's screaming about she needs a budget akin to a blockbuster movie or an Apple product release to promote the Affordable Care Act. And so the numbers were...
Wait a minute, who is screaming that?
Sebelius. Now, here's what the actual budget is. It's $468 million a calendar year for the next 3 years.
To do what?
To just promote Obamacare.
So $500 million to promote Obamacare, and we can't defund that because, oh, my goodness, they'll shut the government down.
It's advertising. Now, there's 323 million men, women, and children in America.
There are?
That works out to, no, not counting the illegals. That turns into $1.4 million per American.
No. If there's 300 million Americans, and we're talking about 400 million, that counts for about $1.25.
Right, $1.4 million. Oh, and dollars, right? But why is so much money being spent to? Yeah,
we don't even need to do that math. $500 million is enough. That's bad.
What do they get for this money? What comes of this money for advertising that we supposedly this is going to sequester? There's no funds for anything. People are being laid off. I mean, and there's an extremely expensive amount of money is being spent here, and it's literally for control. The Obamacare thing is about doling out care. I'm almost 60 years old. I tore my rotator cuff 4 weeks ago with no health insurance and self-employed. I have about a $10,000 bill ahead of me. The doctor that I met with after I spent $455 cash for an MRI said, we don't normally fix tears like this in people your age anymore.
How old are you?
59.
59? They don't fix tears in people your age?
This young doctor, this young whippersnapper, name will be anonymous.
Yes, good idea. All right, well, I get the point. I understand what he said. I get the point. All right, James, thank you for your call, my friend. I appreciate it. I bet I could sit here all day, all night. I could do a Jerry Lewis telethon, and people would be calling me endlessly about what's going on. I get it, believe me. But your government doesn't care. How can you not love your government and love your country at the same time? I don't know. But funny thing, that's how I feel. Oh, boy. Maureen, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the great WSBA. Go.
Yeah, Mark, I think that the only thing they stand for is whatever wobbly line they can tread that will, give them the best chance of getting reelected in their individual districts. That's why, some that are in conservative districts are, will play a pretty strong conservative hand, and then others that are in other districts will, on one issue there'll be one thing, on another issue there'll be something else. I mean, I even got a point to Rubio on this. He went out there for the immigration policy stuff and kind of got bit, and so now he's coming back strong, trying to gain back his conservative following. So, I mean, it's just...
But have you noticed, Maureen, that these former Bush staffers speechwriters, policy wonks, and so forth. They have the long knives out for people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Rubio on this and Mike Lee, and they're very nasty and vicious about it. They're really not conservatives. They are Nixonian in so many respects.
I think that's personality defect there. I think that's just thinking they're smarter than everybody else. I just don't think they have, yet accepted that, they've their time is kind of come and gone now. It's time for the next batch of people with some ideas to come along. I mean, they still think they're the smartest people in town.
Well, what are their ideas? Government, and more government, and status quo, and don't rock the ship, and we can't win. What the hell is that? If you're going to build a party around that, we don't need it. Thank you for your call, Maureen.
Bye-bye.
You take care. Let's continue, shall we? The question on the table is, what does the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. stand for? This is not a complicated question any more than I asked a complicated question in the first hour, appeared to be, which is, what is Barack Obama's foreign policy doctrine? So this hour, what do the Republicans in Washington stand for? Let us go to Brian in Dallas, Texas. WBAP, go.
Hey, Mark, good to talk to you. Man, you're asking some simple but thought-provoking questions, so I'll take a stab at it. I agree with you. It is status quo and pro-government. But it's not that different from the Democrats and Obama. I think my view of Obama is that he views himself as the sovereign, and he really has no enemies foreign. Domestically, it's all about crushing your political enemies and gathering power through whatever the cause of the day is, as you stated earlier.
So he's the sovereign and we're the subjects.
Exactly. But let me say these words, familiar words that you might apply to Obamacare. Remember when he talked about the coal industry? Under his policies, prices wouldn't necessarily skyrocket. You could apply that to his health care policy. And for that matter, you could for Republicans as well.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, Brian. Thank you for your call. You know, in the first chapter, last paragraph of Liberty and Tyranny, in this book, it's amazing. It just keeps going on and on and on. This is from 4.5 years ago. The conservative, you and me, we. The conservative is alarmed by the ascent of a soft tyranny and its cheery acceptance by the neo-statist. The neo-statist folks would include these Republicans I'm talking about. He knows that liberty once lost is rarely recovered. He knows of the decline and eventual failure of past republics. And he knows that the best prescription for addressing society's real and perceived ailments is not to further empower an already enormous federal government beyond its constitutional limits, but to return to the founding principles. A free people living in a civil society, working in self-interested cooperation, and a government operating within the limits of its authority promote more prosperity, opportunity, and happiness for more people than any alternative. Conservatism is the antidote to tyranny precisely because its principles are the founding principles. Do not the Republicans in high office today in Washington, D.C., reject our founding principles and just give them lip service? Isn't this the problem? And isn't this really the problem with the Bushies, the former staffers? When's the last time they argued for first principles? When's the first time? And these are the people who fought Reagan. These are the people who tried to sabotage his efforts to become the Republican nominee for president and almost succeeded. Reagan had a harder time getting the Republican nomination than winning 2 general elections. I want you to think about that, because that's the force we're up against within the Republican Party. And outside the Republican Party, it's obvious. A Democrat Party that's gone off the rails and is trying to drag this country in an untenable position. LifeLock. You know, Florida authorities announced an arrest in an identity theft case where the victim's personal information was compromised and used to obtain credit cards and loans. A search warrant was executed at the suspect's home, where investigators believe that over 60 personal identities appear to have been compromised and assumed for victimization. The man may have had access to personal information through a job as a DJ and his previous employments with various telemarketing companies. Identity thieves are very shrewd. They come in all forms and sizes, all walks of life. They're targeting your checking and savings accounts. They're targeting your cash and your retirement. Identity theft has become such a serious and complex crime, you simply cannot fight it alone. I personally trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my banks from takeover fraud, and my parents have it too. LifeLock can't protect you or your bank accounts if you're not a member. So please visit lifelock.com/Levin, that's /LEVIN for details and my special 10% discount. Or just call LifeLock and use promo code Levin to get the special 10% discount. Here's the number, 1-800-457-LOCK, 1-800-457-LOCK, that's 1-800-457-LOCK. Network doesn't cover all transactions, and the scope may vary.
Mark Levin.
Let's go to Joe, New Jersey, the great WABC. So you're from the whole state, not a particular town or something.
Yeah, I'm from northern New Jersey, Mark. How are you?
All right, my friend. Good. How are you?
Good.
Are you a, hold on now, are you a Crispocrat? Or what the hell is he, Christocrat?
No, I'm a lot too thin to be a Christocrat. I'm a strong conservative, and, he came on strong and so well at first, and, he's making us all cringe now in the state. So
yeah, but he's being backed by the usual Republican donors, but we'll defeat him. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to
defeat him when he runs for president. Go ahead.
Well, he is going to run for president. Hopefully.
He's already running for president. Yeah. People in New Jersey are suckers. Go ahead.
Well, I want to talk about the Republicans. In 2009, I testified at Eric Holder's confirmation hearing.
Really?
And, yes, he was responsible with the Clintons for the release of the FALN terrorists that killed my father.
Joe, tell everybody who you are.
Hi, I'm Joe Connor, and my father was Frank Connor. He was eating lunch at Francis Tavern when I was a kid. The FALN came in, put a bomb in, and killed him, and 3 others that day. They were all arrested, put in prison for long periods of time. And in 1999, when Hillary, who we have to bring up, Mark, was running for Senate in New York, the Clintons released these terrorists without their request. They didn't take the clemency.
Because they were pandering for the Puerto Rican vote.
Yeah, exactly, for Hillary. And it turns out it was Eric Holder who came up with the idea to release them and fired Margaret Love, who was the pardon attorney at the time.
That's right.
Hired a new pardon attorney, Chris Adams, who wouldn't recommend for it. But Clinton released them anyway. And it was all for Hillary. So now you have Hillary and Holder teaming up to use terrorism as they did then for political purposes, similar to what Hillary's doing, in my view, with Benghazi and so many other things. So we need to bring that up. So in 2009, when
we only have a minute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When Holder was being nominated, I went and testified at his confirmation hearing. And out of the 39 Republicans, 19 voted for him. They look for the path of least resistance, Mark. They have no guts. I mean, and I love Jeff Sessions. I got a chance to talk to him, and he voted for Holder anyway. It went down the line. I mean, it was Arlen Specter who was a disaster. All
right, Joe, we got to go. We're out of time. Well, thanks for your call, man, and we appreciate that you're giving us context and some history to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 3, the Power Hour. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Speaking of the Power Hour, you guys bought your Powerball numbers, Mr. Producer? You have. How much did you spend?
I spent $10.
$10. How about you, Mr. Call Screener? $10, 5 cards. What the hell does that mean? Isn't it, it's $2 each? Oh, all right. Okay. Well, I handed somebody 20, some clerk, and they printed it out, and I took it with me. So I only got 10, you mean?
Exactly.
Oh. Well, let's see. If I win, that's a pretty good investment. Don't worry. I know we're not going to win. But, you know, you feel like you want to participate. Let's see here. This is very interesting. I caught this story earlier today, early in the morning. So an atheist group, as the Daily Caller writes, Eric Owens, bullies a high school to ban a mother from praying for her kid's safety. The Madison, Wisconsin-based figures Freedom from Religion Foundation has bullied a New Hampshire school district into forbidding the mother of 2 high school students from praying on the front steps of her kid's high school each morning. The concerned mother, Lizarda Urena, had bestrode the steps of Concord High School for about 15 minutes each morning for 2 years, reports the Concord Monitor. She wore all white and a necklace with a cross with the word Jesus. She said prayers and recited verses from the Bible, Psalm 23, for example, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, for you atheists out there. Now, Urena, who's originally from the Dominican Republic, had been conducting this ritual every school day. Someone found 2 bullets in a toilet in one of the bathrooms at the high school. The high school principal, Gene Connolly, initially gave Urena permission to pray in front of the school. I asked Mr. Connolly, please, if you want our school to be protected, we don't need a police car here. We need the grace of God here every morning, she explained to the Monitor. Connolly noted that the prayers don't promote or advocate religion. She's not teaching prayer. She's not out there asking kids to come with her, the principal told the Monitor. She does not promote religion. But things changed after Rebecca Mackert, a Freedom from Religion Foundation staff attorney who sends out a number of threatening letters each year, sent a note to the Concord School District. We sent an open records request to the school district asking them for copies of any meeting minutes or any sort of documents which gave this woman permission to pray on school property, Maggott told the New Hampshire union leader. School district, I don't have my glasses on, so it looks like Maggott to me, Mr. Producer. School district officials replied quickly, explaining that there was no document giving Urena permission to pray on campus. That wasn't satisfactory for Maggott, though. Urena positions herself at the top of the school stairs and prays out loud, she said. So at the end of the day, it seems the school district decided that fighting on behalf of a lone parent who wants to pray on school grounds every day isn't worth anybody's time. Superintendent Christine Rath said the district won't allow Urena's religious gestures anymore when school resumes this fall. Cassandra Ardinger, president of the local school board, agreed with Rath's decision. I was on a school board. They all agree. It's all incestuous. It's disgusting. To be fair to all kids in the school, it's probably best for the principal to say that she shouldn't be speaking out like this and proselytizing on school grounds. Now, if you want to burn the American flag on school grounds, or if you're an illegal alien, you want to trash the country, you're free to do all that. Absolutely, just have a blast. First Amendment, all the rest. But if you want to pray... See, this lady from the Dominican Republic who's praying on the school steps, she's establishing religion for the whole country. She's establishing religion. Did you know that? The best mode of action was to tell her to cool it. Well, that's fascinating. Now, let's see here. Now, I'm going to tell you how sick this entire situation is beyond what you're hearing. It goes on, anytime religion threatens, the atheist organization is there with an angry letter which usually threatens or at least suggests litigation. When a preschool student in Beaumont, Texas, led a brief prayer ending with the words, "In Jesus' name, Amen," for example, the group sent a letter of complaint describing the fleeting prayer as a serious violation of the First Amendment. You see how the radical left operates. So the First Amendment protects this speech, and now the First Amendment is used against free speech. The group won a battle against a rural Ohio middle school where a portrait of Jesus had hung since the Truman administration. And for a few months, school officials had said they would fight an Establishment Clause-based lawsuit, but they caved when the school district's insurer refused to pay to defend the lawsuit. Now, this group, Freedom From Religion, also demanded a school district in New York force a devoutly Christian teacher to eradicate religious material in her classroom, including 2 quotes from Ronald Reagan. It is amazing to me when you understand our founding that one of the bases for our founding was religious liberty. And the idea that some woman praying on the steps of a high school is establishing religion, or that a portrait of Jesus hanging in a public place is establishing religion, is absurd. It's not establishing anything. It's acknowledging a point of view, a religious point of view. Well, Mark, if the taxpayer pays for it, the taxpayer pays for a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean the whole body politic believes in it. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, nobody's being forced to pray. Nobody's being forced to adhere to a particular religion or religious beliefs. Nobody's being forced to convert. None of these things are happening. And that's what the framers meant. That's what they meant. And this was understood until the 1940s. And I've discussed this before in a case called Everson, in which the Supreme Court ruled that in this idea of separation of church and state, which is nowhere in the Constitution. Now, you'll even hear conservatives who are confused and uninformed about this to say, yes, I believe in separation of church and state. Well, I sure as hell hope not. If you look at our criminal laws, those criminal laws are based on morality. Morality that's taught in religion. And we are a nation that embraced Judeo-Christian belief systems. And the number one system or belief system that was adopted was the notion that the individual can be saved, that the individual can do good, which is why we are a nation that embraces the notion of individuality. It didn't just pop up. These are things that over time have been learned and taught. You look at the First Amendment to the Constitution, it talks about the free exercise of religion and forbids the establishment of religion. They were talking about, obviously, a government religion, or forcing people into certain churches or what have you. They were not talking about acknowledging the dominant religion in this country, which is Christianity. And Christianity is an extremely tolerant religion. And its various, aspects of it, whether you're Roman Catholic or Protestant in one form or another and so forth. I'm just saying that Christianity is very tolerant. The atheists and others like to point to Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and say, see that? They're deists. Well, deists aren't atheists. And that's perfectly fine, by the way, but George Washington wasn't a deist. John Adams wasn't a deist. Alexander Hamilton wasn't a deist. James Madison wasn't a deist. George Mason wasn't a deist. In other words, the overwhelming number of delegates to the Constitutional Convention were Christians. They were religious men in one form or another. And even Jefferson and Franklin were religious men. They were deists, as I said, not agnostic, not atheist. Not that any of this matters. When you look at the Constitution, it does not prohibit a woman from the Dominican Republic praying on the steps of a public school to God to keep her kids in the school safe. Nor does it require every jerk with a phony religion who prays to roosters or whatever to have the same place in the public square as a manger scene or the Star of David. The point is this. The government must not, in essence, molest you politically and impose its will on you. Now, a portrait of Jesus or the Ten Commandments or something like that hanging here or there, well, that offends me. It's not my religion. Well, who gives a damn if it offends you? You offend me. Your damn Obamacare offends me. Everything about you people on the left offends me. And here I am, stuck, surrounded by you like all the rest of regular America. When you burn the American flag, it pisses me off to no end. Yes, I'm offended, but you're allowed to do it. So says the Supreme Court. You can burn it, but whatever you do, just don't hang it outside your apartment if the HOA says you can't. You can burn it, just don't respect it. That's all. I'm telling you, folks, this country with this court system and everything, it's so screwed up, and we just take it. We accept it. Don't we? And so the school district and all these other school districts and places of public places, you get a little group that hangs a sign outside its door, a Freedom from Religion Foundation. Yes, running around, threatening people, suing people. Can you imagine doing this for a living? Can you imagine being these people and doing that for a living? Hey, what do you do, Mommy? What do you do, Daddy? Oh, I screw over religious people. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Mission creep by one agency and department after another. I'm meaning to tell you about this from the New York Slimes a few days ago. As hundreds of commuters emerged from Amtrak, commuter trains at Union Station in Washington on a recent morning, an armed squad of men and women dressed in bulletproof vests made their way through the crowds. The squad wasn't with the Washington Police Department or Amtrak's police force, but was one of the Transportation Security Administration's Visible Intermodal Prevention and Response Squads, or VIPR teams for short, assigned to perform random security sweeps to prevent terrorist attacks at transportation hubs across the United States. Did we know that the TSA had a Special Forces unit? And what the hell is the Amtrak police force for? Or the Washington, D.C. police force? The TSA, huh? Said Donald Neubauer of Greenville, Ohio, as he walked past the squad. I thought they're just at the airports. So did I, Donald. With little fanfare, the agency best known for airport screenings has vastly expanded its reach to sporting events, music festivals, rodeos, highway way stations, and train terminals. And not everyone is happy. I'm sure they're happy on the 5 there, the Republicans on the 5. Oh, what's the problem? Well, what's wrong? TSA and local law enforcement officials say the teams are a critical component of the nation's counterterrorism efforts, but some members of Congress, auditors at the Department of Homeland Security, and civil liberties groups are sounding alarms. Where is the Freedom from Religion group? Oh, I'm sorry. They're busy chasing down immigrants from the Dominican Republic, moms who are praying on public school steps for safety for the school children. The teams are also raising hackles among passengers who call them unnecessary and intrusive. Our mandate is to provide security and counterterrorism operations for all high-risk transportation targets, not just airports and aviation, said John S. Pistole, the administrator of the agency. The Viper teams, notice, VIPR, the Viper teams are a big part of that. When did this happen? Where the hell were we? Some in Congress, however, say the TSA has not demonstrated the teams are effective. Well, have they demonstrated that they're legal? Auditors at the department, and by the way, that's enough with they're only there to protect us crap. What next? What next? The Department of Commerce has a Viper team too, can go anywhere because it involves commerce? The Viper teams have little to do with the agency's original mission to provide security screenings at airports. In some cases, their actions amount to warrantless searches. All right. TSA officials respond that the random searches are special needs or administrative searches. I tell you, I'm telling you, I take a backseat to nobody on national security and law enforcement. Those of you who listen to me over the years, you know this full well, but this is outrageous. That the TSA has a special forces team called the Vipers. And they can go anywhere pretty much. Anywhere. The Visible Intermodal Prevention and Response Squads. Now, that name was created in order to come up with the phrase Viper. It's just, folks, am I the only one who feels this way? I mean, I've reached a point of disbelief here. I said several months ago, and I was attacked for this, but so what? The elements of a police state are here. And here's another one. I'll be right back.
They can clone the others, but there's only one Mark Levin, and you can call him at 877-381-3811.
Well, here's another breaking story up on the Drudge Report. Reuters. Listen to this, folks. I mean, honest. Details of a U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration program that feeds tips to federal agents and then instructs them to alter the investigative trail were published in a manual used by agents of the Internal Revenue Service for 2 years. The practice of recreating the investigative trail, highly criticized by former prosecutors and defense lawyers after Reuters reported it this week, is now under review by the Justice Department. 2 high-profile Republicans have also raised questions about the procedure. Why aren't high-profile Democrats raising questions about the procedure? You can't destroy the investigative trail. People have a right to due process, including you if you're being audited by the IRS or prosecuted by the IRS. You don't alter the investigative trail. A 350-word entry in the Internal Revenue Manual instructed agents of the U.S. Tax Agency to omit any reference to tips supplied by the DEA's Special Operations Division, especially from affidavits, court proceedings, or investigative files. The entry was published and posted online in 2005 and 2006 and was removed in early 2007. The IRS is among 24 arms of the government working with the Special Operations Division, including the FBI, the NSA, and the Central Intelligence Agency. And we have damn fools all over TV and radio and the print media defending all this crap. An IRS spokeswoman had no comment on the entry or on why it was removed from the manual. Reuters recovered the previous editions from the archives of the Westlaw Legal Database, which is owned by Thomson Reuters Corporation, the parent of the news agency. As Reuters reported Monday, the Special Operations Division of the DEA funnels information from overseas NSA intercepts, domestic wiretaps, informants, and a large DEA database of telephone records to authorities nationwide to help them launch criminal investigations of Americans. Oh, good Lord. Between all of this going on, the collection of data and all these law enforcement related to federal groups with all this information, and then the non-law enforcement agencies and departments with all the data they're collecting and all the rules they're pushing out with the penalties and the fines. And then on top of that, Obamacare and all the information you have to supply with respect to your innermost secrets about your health, mental, physical, what have you. And then we just blink and move on. That's it. That's it. Now, Monday's Reuters report cited internal government documents that show that the law enforcement agents have been trained to conceal how such investigations truly began, to recreate the investigative trail to effectively cover up the original source of the information. Is that what the Bill of Rights permits? And what, am I going to get lectures from these former Bushies that everything's okay? Because this apparently happened in the Bush administration. Don't worry, what are you, right-wing nut? Defense attorneys and some former judges and prosecutors say that systematically hiding potential evidence from defendants violates the Constitution. Yes, it does. According to documents and interviews, agents use a procedure they call parallel construction to recreate the investigative trail, stating in affidavits or in court, for example, that an investigation began with a traffic infraction rather than a tip. This is very uncomfortable to me. I'm not just talking about the substance of what I'm reporting to you, but to criticize the DEA, which is part of the Justice Department, and many wonderful, wonderful agents in the DEA who have nothing to do with this. These are orders that come on from on high, that are imposed. The IRS document offers further detail on the parallel construction program. Quote, Special Operations Division has the ability to collect, collate, analyze, evaluate, and disseminate information and intelligence derived from worldwide multi-agency sources, including classified projects, the IRS document says. The SOD converts extremely sensitive information into usable leads and tips, which are then passed to the field offices for real-time enforcement activity against major international drug trafficking organizations. Well, clearly it's not just them. It's not limited to them under the rule. The IRS document, the 2005 document, focuses on tips that are classified and notes the Justice Department closely guards the information provided with strict oversight and so forth. Now, the Justice Department itself is investigating. House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Rogers, Republican, Michigan, expressed concern with the concept of parallel construction. That'll be defended. That's the next. We're not on a slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen. This is an avalanche, and we're caught up in it. And there's a point at which everybody should be saying enough is enough. Stop. This is enough. Altering an evidence trail is what they're really talking about. Altering an evidence trail. I mean, we give terrorists more due process in Guantanamo Bay. So, conservatives should be absolutely, just fed up with this. A bloated federal government. This is exactly what you can expect from a bloated federal government. This is out of control. I will tell you this, once again, this was not occurring when I was at the Justice Department under Attorney General Meese in the Reagan administration. No way. we didn't have parallel construction. I never heard of it before. Oh, well, let's see if there's any more. No, nothing more to tell you about that matters. All right, let's take a few calls. There's one other issue I want to get to before we're done. Let us go to Tom on the big island of Hawaii on the Internet. How are you, sir?
God bless you, Mark. I really mean that. You're a true voice of conservatism. And Ronald Reagan said it best back in 1964 in the speech that was called The Time for Choosing, where he said that if we do not preserve the best last hope on earth, which is the United States of America, we're going to sentence our children to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. And I wish that you were talking about how, what do these people represent, these Republicans in the Senate and the Congress? What do they represent? Well, they need to sit down and watch this speech that was given 40 years ago and see what conservatism is really about. You know, the conservative principles are in our Constitution, but the man Ronald Reagan was, I think, in our time, we both served under Ronald Reagan. I joined up in 1980 in the Marine Corps and stayed in all the way through the time he was out of office. And the feeling of hope that we received, my fellow Marines in boot camp when they knew that Carter was kicked out of office and that, yes, there is hope for our country after all, I feel we've lost that. When President Reagan died in June of 2004, I believe that the foxes got loosed in the hen house, and
but Tom, this is the problem, and so much of what he did has been reversed, and so we have a systemic problem here, and the more distant we become from our founding heritage, from our Constitution, even these little respites, the Reagan 8 years and so forth, are going to become increasingly rare and less consequential. I mean, like Obamacare and things of this sort, they're almost impossible to reverse and unravel when you have Republicans conducting themselves this way. Thank you for your service, my friend, and an excellent call. As a matter of fact, the last quote in my new book, The Liberty Amendments, refers to that 1964 speech that Ronald Reagan gave and refers to the point that Tom was making. And it's this. This is Reagan. He said, "You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. If we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us that we justified our brief moment here. We did all that could be done." That statement, along with the rest of that speech, will live as long as mankind exists. And that statement, if echoed today in some different phraseology by Ted Cruz or Mike Lee and so forth, would be attacked as a radical statement, as a non-conservative statement by the establishment Republicans. Was Reagan an alarmist? An alarmist in the sense that he was alarmed by what was going on and he was warning the American people, yes. But an alarmist in the sense of a Chicken Little? No. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. And so I would say this to you in my listening audience. And this is the last paragraph of the Liberty Amendments. Let us do all that can be done. Let us be inspired by the example of our forefathers and their courage, strength, and wisdom. Let us be inspirited by the genius of the Constitution and its preservation of the individual and the civil society. Let us unleash an American Renaissance in which liberty is celebrated and self-government is cherished. Let us together, we the people, restore the splendor of the American Republic. Time is of the essence. Let us get started today. That's the end of the Liberty Amendments. Because Reagan was right. Lincoln was right. Joseph Story was right, the great Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. The French Republicans today are wrong. Those who excuse what's going on or dismiss it as just another passing wave are wrong. Yes, we Americans have been through a lot, which is exactly why we know that we have to stem this tide. We've been through a lot and we've come through a lot, not by wishing for the best, not by just claiming that we're Americans and hoping for the best, but by taking matters into our own hands. And that's what I'm talking about and have been talking about it in the weeks leading up to the release of this book. 5 days away. There's a fiscal fight in Washington approaching. In fact, it's due to start in a month or so. It's likely to rattle the confidence in the American economy once again. I'm talking about the 2014 budget, the so-called continuing resolution, and the debt ceiling debates that follow shortly thereafter. More uncertainty. Will you be prepared if our economy collapses under the weight of government debt and inflation? With gold and silver at least 2-year lows, now is the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic catastrophes. With Goldline's two-way price guarantee program, if the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to reprice it at the lower price. If the price of your qualifying purchase goes up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has covered you. So call Goldline right now, the only precious metals company I trust, to learn more about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special. And for a limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit and mention that I, Mark Levin, sent you, Goldline will include a free commemorative medal that I personally designed with Ben Franklin on one side and Independence Hall on the other, and I should tell you, I'm in the midst of personally designing another. So this particular commemorative medal, you can get it as long as it lasts, which will not be forevermore. And you'll also get the free investor kit. So please call Goldline today at 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. The number is 1-877-365-2646, 1-877-365-COIN, 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
3 minutes left in the whole program. Well, I didn't get to everything I wanted to get to, but that's par for the course. It's always tomorrow. How about we go to Kenny, Houston, Texas, the great KTRH country. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Mark. Long-time listener, second-time caller, and you're a gem to this country, Mark.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate that.
I wish you would run for office. I would vote for you right away.
I would run from office.
I don't blame you. Hey, look, I'll be brief. I'll try to be brief. Everything you've talked about since the last hour ties in, I think, pretty good with the point I was going to make and the question I was going to ask. And that is the prayer woman, the praying mother at the high school, the DEA issue you talked about, the TSA Viper issue that you talked about. All that, I think, is related to an underlying agenda that has been a cancer to this country, which is a progressive agenda. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's rooted itself so deep into our system that it's going to be really hard for us to fight. I'm not saying impossible, but... And so that kind of ties into the last hour. The people we have in office right now, they're supposed to be fighting against this kind of stuff. They're just not doing it. And what I see is a tear between the Republican Party, between people like Ted Cruz and those kinds of people, the true conservatives, and those that I guess we used to call rhinos. I don't know what you call them now, but I call them progressives.
I call them French Republicans.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes complete sense.
I actually call them all statists. But get to your point, because we're about to sign off here.
So what's the my point is, I wanted to ask you, what's the difference between you talk about liberal and quite a bit. What's the difference between a progressive and a liberal? Because I think what we have is progressives in the Republican Party, and
I really don't think there's any real difference between a progressive and a liberal. I call them statists, progressive, liberal, pseudo-communists, socialists, what have you. They believe in a centralized government to lord over the people, and they don't believe that your property is your property, which is why they're always talking about class warfare and the sort of thing. And you'll notice, from the most aggressive totalitarian to the meekest of the socialists, they all use similar phraseologies. They may use different tactics and strategies, but similar phraseologies, similar policies to one degree or another. So no need to get lost in the fog or the weeds here. They're statists, and I've been calling Republicans who really support the status quo neo-statists. They just do not believe in liberty. They do not embrace the Constitution, which is why they embrace the New Deal, the Great Society, and whatever else they think is coming down the pike. They think this is all inevitable. They think we should surrender to it. They think we should accept it because in their minds that's good politics. Thanks for your call, my friend. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. America, right here tomorrow. Let's do it. I'm Mark Levin.